Shams Charania just dropped a bombshell Rockets trade report on this morning's Pat McAfee show as he labeled the Houston Rockets as a favorite to win the Kevin Durant sweepstakes this summer, with KD guaranteed to leave Phoenix. Welcome in here to Rockets Digest. I'm Jace Andrews. I appreciate you watching. And make sure you hit that subscribe button because we're getting these reports out to you as quick as possible. The report happened this morning. We're getting the video out to you this afternoon. So if you want right on the dot reports, hit that subscribe button. You're not going to find better coverage of the Houston Rockets on YouTube than right here on Rockets Digest. All right, let's start with this. Shams Charania made an appearance this morning talking about Kevin Durant on the Pat McAfee show, and the question was labeled in many different facets. Obviously, if you've watched the Pat McAfee show, they have different people on there that represent quote-unquote different teams. And there was a Boston guy who mentioned the Celtics a lot, but then Pat McAfee took over and labeled a question of, with Kevin Durant, what are we looking at? Obviously, he's out right now with an injury over the next week, but what does the future look like for none other than Phoenix, but also for Kevin Durant and, for that matter, Devin Booker? And so we go to what he said on the show. We start first with this saying, quote, "There's going to be changes coming to Phoenix barring a miracle finish to the year. From a roster perspective, that starts with Kevin Durant and potentially finding him a new home. The Suns and Kevin Durant would work together on any trade," end quote. And I want to start with that because the very end of that quote, Kevin Durant and the Phoenix Suns are going to work together on a trade. When the trade deadline originally happened this season, that was really not the case. It was Phoenix is going to get the best deal they can for Kevin Durant. In previous times, Kevin, it's always been getting the best deal. Now it's a different situation. Kevin Durant is 37 years old. Obviously, he has a lot of leverage. And so the Suns know this. And they are going to not only, one, get a very big package for him, but two, they're going to get him to a place that he wants to go, because the package that they gave up for him, they're not going to get back in return. That's just not logical for Phoenix to think, and they know that. And speaking of Phoenix, they're not in the playoff picture right now. This is the playoff picture from 1 through 10. They're just below that threshold of the play-in. Obviously not even close to the guaranteed playoffs after that, so it's a very big question mark for the Phoenix Suns, and that's kind of why these reports were trickling out. Obviously, we talked about Kevin Durant and, how he was going to be potentially a trade candidate coming up in the next, this summer. But it really depended on the Phoenix finish and what exactly they were going to do in this playoffs. Well, now it's becoming more and more clear. The playoffs are very much out of the picture, especially when you talk about you're going down to the final part of the season here, and KD is not going to be playing due to an injury. And so with that, let's continue on in the report here, saying, quote, "I can tell you guys this. Back at the NBA trade deadline, there were a list of teams that there was mutual interest with Kevin Durant, and those teams, from my understanding, that's Minnesota, New York, Houston, San Antonio, and Miami," end quote. Those are the big teams right there. And so, again, going back to the standings and looking at all this, obviously Houston is in the best position in terms of standings in the Western Conference for looking for a Kevin Durant trade. Now, he did mention Minnesota. He did mention San Antonio. And San Antonio, we're going to continue on this report, and I'll kind of explain more about them, but I see them, they're actually more of a threat than people might think, especially with Victor Wembanyama and the way that their season was going until the injury to Wembanyama, and again, what is his details. But looking more at the Eastern Conference as well, New York was a big name talked about. The Knicks are dying for a championship right now. They're wanting one, and so maybe KD is the move they try and make. Obviously, the Celtics and Cavs are running away right now at the Eastern Conference in terms of playoff positioning and what's coming up. But Miami is also a team to watch down there at number 9. And that's where I want to kind of continue with the report from Shams, because the more information he gives, the more those teams can kind of play out, see who has the best shot. And so we continue here with what he said, saying, quote, "Those are the types of teams, from my understanding, that had interest then, and I expect them all to be in the mix this offseason," end quote. And I'll tell you what, let's just continue on to the final one we have, saying, Quote, the biggest thing to keep an eye on for all NBA teams and all NBA fans of those teams, how does your team finish in the playoffs? How does the playoffs go? Because that is going to determine who feels like they are a Kevin Durant away, end quote. And that's really the tell-all right there. We know that Kevin Durant is going to be in the process of these trade talks with Phoenix. We know the history of Kevin Durant. He went to the Warriors. He wanted a ring. He got it. He wants another. That is what he wants. And on top of which, it also has to make sense for the teams trading. And so I go back to those 4 teams here: Minnesota, New York, Houston, San Antonio, and Miami. Okay, so how are those teams looking in terms of the playoffs? Miami Heat, they're at the 9 slot. So they're going to make the play-in game looking like it most likely, but don't know that for sure just yet. There's still time in the season. And then for that matter here, we go to the Western Conference. Houston being the number 2 seed. The big thing with Houston and what we've seen more recently, not early on in the season, they played well against the top teams. They were able to take down OKC once. They took out the Celtics and the Cavs in back-to-back games. People forget that, but the the Rockets were able to take out the Cavs in back-to-back nights, and people kind of just forget that. Now, the East is definitely, I think, a lot less of a cluttered conference, so I don't know how much better the Cavs actually are than all of them, but that's besides the point. Houston being the 2 slot, do they think they are a Kevin Durant away, depending on how this end of the season goes? Is that what happens? Is there something that's just missing when you get there? Because you lost to Lakers. Again, hard to put a lot of stuff on that just because there was some crazy shooting from their bench players. It was on the road. The Lakers are on a really great run, especially at home right now. And so I want to see the games against Denver, in the final parts of the year. You're going to play another game against LA. You're going to play another game against LA and the Clippers. You're going to play a game against Golden State. I mean, there is a lot of big-time games coming up. Obviously, tonight, you got the Utah Jazz in a game that I would classify as a must-win situation. But then you have Minnesota. They're 7. I don't know if I buy Minnesota being in here just because they just don't fit Kevin Durant. If you think about the teams he's been on, OKC is where he drafted. Okay, throw that team out. From there, he goes to a big market in Golden State who was vying for the championship. Okay, he then goes to Brooklyn. Not as big a market as New York, as like the Knicks, but still, Brooklyn in New York, it's a big market. And then Phoenix, questionable on, big market or not, but still, he wants to be in more of a bigger sized market, a team that is going to be, fighting for the championship. And you pair Kevin Durant up with Anthony Edwards, they are going to be a top team in the Western Conference. But you pair Kevin Durant up with Alperen Şengün, Jalen Green. Let's say you get rid of Fred VanVleet, you keep Dillon Brooks. I mean, there are a multitude of options here, and I think Alperen Şengün and Jalen Green, along with Amen Thompson, you slide Kevin Durant in there, this team becomes the automatic favorite to win the Western Conference next year. And so that's where I ask you this question. Would you like to see a trade for Kevin Durant? Is that something that is, processing through your head? Let's say the Rockets go on this postseason, they fall before they get to the finals, and, there was obvious miss of a superstar. Would you want to trade for Kevin Durant? I want you to put that down in the comment section. All right, we'll find out what happens. I appreciate you and your time on today's show. We'll see you next time on Rockets Digest. Peace out, guys.